All right. Welcome, everyone. This is our October pit stop. And the focus of today is really to gain some awareness and knowledge about, now my brain is going totally crazy, about sort of what I'm going to call like non-traditional classroom learning experiences. And these are actually experiences that tend to be the most powerful and impactful for our students. And they're a heck of a lot of fun for faculty and students alike. So I've invited actually Jessica Perone from the Center for Civic Engagement to help us understand a little bit about service learning and how we might get started. What is it? How do we do it? And then I invited Janet Peters and Rebecca Cooney to share with us their personal experiences with implementing this in their classrooms. And our hope here is that you'll get excited and maybe want to reach out to these folks with some to get some ideas about how you might do it in your own classroom. So with no further ado, I'm actually going to turn this over to Jessica so she can give us a 30,000-foot flyover of what we're in for today.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I am Jessica Perone from the Center for Civic Engagement. Also here is Allison from the CCE, who is the Service Learning Coordinator. If you reach out to us, you would be working with mostly Allison and me as well. We're working as a team. Also in the chat, I put our general service learning flyer with contact information. So feel free to use that as well. So I'm just going to get started with some basic understanding of what is service learning and some data that we have been that we want to share with you from a recent study, a service learning study with WSU students, and then turn it over to Janet and Rebecca to talk about what service learning looks like in real life in the classroom. So just one second. Okay, so the Center for Civic Engagement, we exist to advance the land-grant mission by engaging students, faculty, and community as co-educators, co-learners, and co-leaders to affect positive social change. And that trifecta is really the heart of where service learning lives, of students, faculty, and community working together to work on community-identified goals. So service learning and volunteering is very similar, but service learning takes the action and volunteering and intentionally matches it with the learning outcomes of the class. So this is where students get to apply what they're learning in class in a real world setting to gain a deeper understanding of the course material. And at the same time they're doing that, they're supporting our community with assisting community partners with reaching their goals, and also learning a lot more about themselves and inequities within our community that they may have otherwise not known about if they didn't have the opportunity to engage in a service learning project. The CCE organizes two types of, or really three models of service learning that faculty can choose how to implement into their class and whatever works best for them or the size of the class. Course projects, that type of model is where we match a community partner and a community project with an entire class. And that class works together, either in small teams or as a whole group, to work on projects identified by the community partner that will meet their needs and also match the learning goals of the class. And then another model that we implement and suggest are where students choose individual events to participate in or choose to participate in CCE-led projects. Those two kind of go together. So this is where students are assigned to participate in X number of volunteer projects of their choice or with a specific population. So if they are in a child development class, the faculty can say, I want you to do 2 events with youth, preschool through 5th grade, or whatever parameters that would be appropriate. And then the students would go choose projects on GivePulse, which is our platform that hosts the projects. They register, they participate, they record their hours. And then built into the class are some intentional reflection exercises or workshops that CCE provides, or reflection assignments, so writing assignments, so that they have that opportunity to connect the experience outside of the classroom with their learning goals of the class. And then CCE-led projects is a unique type of project that CCE offers. There's 25 to 30 projects per week that our project leaders, which are undergraduate staff, provide transportation for students into the community. So the students register for whatever project they would like. They meet here at our office. They take a CCE card to the project, do the project together, participate in a reflection exercise, and then get transported back to campus. So there's a lot to choose from. Like I said, 25 to 30 per week. And the transportation really removes that barrier for students who don't have a way to participate in things off campus because they don't have a car. We also know that through service learning, students do achieve these 4 learning outcomes. So they achieve personal growth and a sense of civic responsibility, self-awareness and self-efficacy, student success. We know that students who participate in this in-service learning have higher grades in the class, higher grades overall, and a higher rate of retention. And then a longer-term commitment to social justice. And we believe this is because they're able to match their own personal interests and passions with projects in the community that also are working towards the same type of social justice issues they are passionate about. Not every type of project can be considered service learning. So we do have 7 criteria that all of the partners and projects have to meet in order for it to be considered a service learning project. But most of all, it has to meet a community identified goal of a group that is either a nonprofit or a group serving the public good. We do not partner with for-profit agencies or businesses, and there are other groups, departments on campus that do focus on these groups, but we are intentionally looking to partner with nonprofits and groups serving the public good. These 7 are on our website, so I won't read them all in detail to you. I do want you to know, everyone to know about the tool that we have at WSU called Give Pulse. This is a platform that hosts all of the service events that students can review and choose from to participate in. Their last academic year, there were over 8,000 opportunities on Give Pulse for students to choose from. Now that is global because we do support the global campus. So that's not 8,000 just in Pullman, but all over WSU. And all the campuses have access to this. Every student, staff, and faculty can log in and review the events. There's a contact button on each page so that if you see an event or community agency that even the faculty would like to know more about, they can just click the Contact Us button and get in direct contact with the leaders of those organizations. But CCE manages this platform, so do reach out if you have any questions. We provide technical support and any type of support that students, faculty, or staff would like with using this resource. And lastly, another big why to include service learning as a component of a class is demonstrated in this experiment that we did with Bio 102 faculty and students for 2 years from 17 to 19. There were over almost 2,400 students who participated. And really we were looking at how service learning impacts students here at WSU, just to get some local data on student success, retention, and grades. And what we found was that students who participated in the service project, and for Bio 102, half of the students each semester did one CCE-led project, and the other half of the class did the typical assignments and labs without being required to do a project. And the students who did one project each time, you can see the orange bar is the service learning group, and the blue bar is the students who did not have to do a service project. And this is for end of semester GPA. So the students who did one project across all semesters, you can see had higher grade point averages. And then also we looked at retention. So you can see that the students in orange are the service learning student, or excuse me, the orange are the white students, blue bar as students of color, and the students who participated in the service learning project. You can see that for retention wise, students of color were retained at an equal amount of numbers coming back from fall of 17 to fall of 18 who participated in just one project. So there's a lot of follow-up to do to that, but we do believe that the service learning project and having that sense of belonging and connection probably played a big role in that piece. So here's Allison and my contact information, and we're always happy to meet with anybody who'd like to know more about service learning individually. You do not have to commit long-term to service learning, and we help people onboard and include service one semester, and then the next semester it might not be a good fit depending on what you're teaching. So please reach out at any time to let us know any questions you have. We can talk to you and share syllabi and whatever questions, and also tell you how we can be of better support. So I'm going to pass the, well, does anyone have any questions so far for me about CCE or our service learning program?
And I just wanted to point out for folks who might be joining via phone and not able to access the chat, Johanna Phelps also posted some information in there that I'll share afterward to participants that is about the Community Engaged Scholars program on Vancouver campus. So there's lots of cool movement in this area on each of our campuses.
Okay, well, I'm going to pass the mic. Rebecca, do you want to start next?
I do. So Janet and I are here to share sort of the faculty experience on service learning. So I'll start with my example of one of my smaller classes. I'm a professor in Murrow College here in Pullman, and I incorporate CCE in both small and large classes. My small classes tend to be upper division, and we tend to work with one or multiple regional kind of clients or nonprofit organizations. And then this is the first semester I've incorporated into a UCOR class with 160 students. And instead of doing the one-on-one client relationship, we're doing, we're really partnering with CCE as a whole and using the Give Pull system with a three-tiered, I don't know, I guess assignment where it starts with registration and then they do the actual service learning and then they close with reflection. So far, so good. It's going really well. So after we cover our bases on just our basic example, we can talk about challenges and rewards. And then if there's time, we'll get a little bit into developing a social media framework as well. So I'm not seeing the chat very easily here. So just a second. Let me just pop it up. So if you have questions, feel free to interrupt us as we're going through stuff, and then we'll pause for questions as well. Okay. So this is a poster that I did for one of the end of the year CCE events. It's pre-pandemic. I use this example because it's the most robust. And this is when I was teaching Constrat 383, which is a PR writing class. And we developed sort of a ever-evolving partnership in community health awareness, working with all regional community health organizations. I'll pop through. We'll be sending that. So our focus was writing in the major. Our focus was PR. We did this over 2 solid years, and it was mostly juniors and seniors. And the major goal of the entire project was to raise awareness about basically significant public health issues in Whitman County. We also wanted to give the students practical, hands-on, real-time experience in the realm of public relations and writing and social media and other things. And then we also wanted to help build collaborations between the university and our regional public health entities. So this was all on public health awareness. And we primarily worked with Whitman County Public Health. We had a wonderful nurse there who was so engaged and so involved, and she really helped develop this. But as time went on, we brought in some regional food insecurity groups, Pullman Regional Hospital, Latah Alliance on Mental Health, all came in to the system as well. Students worked primarily in teams, although I did have rotating sort of just to make sure that they had broad experience in writing or in social media or in creating digital assets or going out into the community, grassroots, if you will. I had them rotate so that they would get a full breadth of experience, but they did develop, implement, and evaluate public health awareness campaigns, including deep diving into actual data that's collected by Whitman County, which I thought was a really value add into the experience, where they had to analyze data to adjust their strategy for audience or reach or approach. So I thought that was really valuable. The main goal was to provide real world application. As these students were kind of coming out of their sort of core requirements for the major, this was 383 is one of their first exposures to actually doing work and working with other peers who are interested in the same thing. So really just wanted them to get some kind of boots on the ground, literal and real exposure into what it's like to write press releases and feature stories and put together media lists and interview people for stories, and then try to take these long form stories and version them so that they can go into social media. And this particular service learning project gave them all of that. So it was really great. They also got to work collaboratively in teams, which was a huge value to them, and to learn the pros and pitfalls of that. They always reflected on their experience. We did micro reflections, and then we did large scale reflections and presentations. They did that throughout their experience, and they were always challenged to connect what they were learning in class with the actual work that they were doing. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for a second and turn it over. For one thing, questions so far, and then also, Janet, I want you to be able to share yours before we get into challenges. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing so Janet can bring hers up.
Okay. Before I bring up my PowerPoint, I'll give you my context, which is I teach statistics and I teach it in the Department of Psychology. And so my service learning project was really born from this reality that I was sort of facing, that students were coming in and just asking this question of like, why, if I want to be a psych major and I want to help people, and I consider or view myself, my identity as a people-oriented person, why do I have to learn about numbers? Like, those things feel very disconnected to a lot of my students. And so I had been looking for something that sort of united those things. I think the other reason it came about was, in addition to what I just mentioned, there's a lot of anxiety around teaching stats or taking stats for my students, where they might have had bad experiences, but they have a pretty, like, there's a lot of anxiety and worry and like self-degradation around being a quote unquote math person. So I really wanted a project that would be meaningful, that would do all these course outcomes that I wanted. Yes, I want quantitative literacy. Yes, I want them to understand how to analyze data, but I also want them to understand why and how that helps us understand the human condition. So I started creating these service learning projects to start answering the why while also meeting my course outcomes. So that's sort of my context. I'll go ahead and share my slides. The other thing that I'll tell you as I start to share my slides is I lost my train of thought is what I did. So I was trying to do two things at once, which is like never a good idea. I'm taking a slightly different tact than Rebecca is. I'm going to give you what I think are some tips and to show you, to like kind of hopefully show you this is what I did or this is how I do it. So you can get a sense of what it might look like in your class, maybe. So I will share my slides. The other thing is I'm just kind of showing you what I'm doing. So this may or may not work for you, but sometimes I think it's helpful to see like not just the theoretical, but the how you make it happen in your class. So for me, one of the first things in setting up your project is you really have to think about what do you want to accomplish? Like, service learning project is amazing. And also, if you jump into it without putting some planning and foresight, it can become overwhelming pretty quickly. And it can be, I don't think it serves your learning goals as much if you don't think about what is it you're trying to achieve and how does that service learning project specifically achieve it. So what I've put in here, I ended up a few years ago, I ended up writing a book chapter about this, and I can give anyone these handouts, but here's an example of these are the skills I need my students to have. Now, your students might need different skills, but I need, for my stats course, right, I need analytical thinking. I need information management. They have to be able to use new hardware and software systems to analyze the data, right? So it has all of these specific skills. And then you see on the right is like, this is how they're going to get it in this class. And some of it's their generic, their homework and their exams. But if you look, a lot of those are coming from the service learning. So that oral communication, it's because they present their results to our community partner. So in my planning phase, I'm like, well, when they leave that final exam, right, on the last day of the semester and they're going home for vacation, it's like, what do I want them to know? And then from there, I figure out, okay, how do I make my class support those goals? Here, if you're interested, also I said I do a timeline. This is my general timeline. And so if you're thinking about service learning and you could use a little structure or scaffolding, it's kind of like, okay, before the semester, you've got to find your partner, you got to talk to them, you got to make sure you're on the same page. The first few weeks, you've got to introduce it to students, right? You've got to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is who we're working with. Midway through, you've got to make sure you're making progress. So those are sort of, everyone's is going to be different. That is how I break apart my thing. And it just helps me to have a plan. So assuming you've done that stuff, once you implement your project, I think about it in phases, the beginning of the semester, throughout, and at the end. So for me, at the very beginning of the semester, like on the first day of class, I'm showing them this. I'm saying, look what your employers want, right? So this is the Forbes list of the skills that they want college students to have. And you can see those red boxes. Those are skills that we're going to do in our class and with the service learning project. Because my goal is to say, like, look at these, like, yes, you're going to learn how to analyze data, but look at these cool things you're going to do, and you're going to be marketable, and you're going to get to practice. We have a community partner that lets us achieve this. So at the end of this class, you're going to have some marketable skills. I also really believe in telling them why you're doing the service learning project, right? And having them reflect for themselves. And I give my students this reading. So you see this reading, How Service Learning Affects Students. It's the one, I think I might even give them an excerpt. It's pretty short. Like, they read it, it's like, oh, service learning can help develop leadership skills, and it can help them connect concepts. And it's everything you and I might tell them, but I have them read it and then I have them reflect. What based on what you read, what skills are you hoping to get out of it? What skills do you need to work on? What skills do you think are marketable for your job that you're going into? And to me, that tees up the success of the service learning project, because it's like, this has meaning and you will get meaning from it. And here's some evidence about, right? Like what Jessica presented. We see positive outcomes. Tell them what those positive outcomes are and let them reflect and percolate on them. So that's what I do at the beginning. When I introduce the project, I try to, I want to they've been introduced to the community partner, but again, I tell them why we're doing that partner, because I could easily, it's stats, I could easily give them fake data. And quite honestly, that would be 1,000 times easier than the service learning project. If there's one thing you should know about the service learning project, it's not taking the easy road. And I'm like, well, why? Why are we doing this? Right. And so I tell them a little bit about my goals and like how doing this project and working with a community partner, it really helps make their education, they can see it so clearly. They can see the skills they're gaining. They can understand how do they apply data to people. And so again, we talk about like you're developing some really important skills. I even go through literally their resume goals, right? Like, look what you're getting out of this by doing this project. Like these are things that you can talk about in interviews because you have worked with an organization. So I put this, and this slide, this resume goals slide that you see is probably my most requested slide throughout the whole semester. That is the slide the students like, can I have that? Because it helps them connect what they're learning and what we're doing in our service learning project to these meaningful outcomes. So that's how I introduce it. And then throughout the semester, I have them constantly engaging in reflection, right? So when we start to analyze the data, how are these skills helping you in your future job? What have you learned about your community? So I've worked with homeless shelters, I've worked with the food bank, I've worked with domestic violence shelters, and a lot of students are sheltered from that, to be honest. And some aren't though, but some have experienced it firsthand. And either way, they tend to get a lot out about learning about it from a different angle. And so I have them, and you can see, and again, I'm happy to share any of this if it sits with you, is here are reflections I do throughout the semester. And you can see that this is very much tying course content to the project. It's very much reflection about skills and personal development. Because the reality is like, our brains need space to make those connections. We can't assume that students will make them spontaneously. We can scaffold and support those connections. So that's what I do. And then at the end of the semester, so for me, this is one of the things I do on the last day. I'll do it really quick because I've talked for a long time. Is I try and say like, okay, we worked with a community partner. We met with them and we heard their needs and we had to identify like a needs assessment. We analyzed their data for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you wrote up and presented a final report back to our community partner. Based off that experience, let's talk about what the skills you've learned through this are. And again, you see an echo. This echoes the first day. It looks a little different, but it echoes those skills that employers want. So you can see that. These are also highly requested slides because students really like being able to have the chance to articulate how what they're doing is going to influence later. Again, I give them example skills that they're learning throughout this service learning project. And then we also talk about why we should hire you, and I give them, they do this in groups, and I give them the most common interview questions. And I let them answer it using their experience from our service learning project, right? So like, for example, discuss your educational background. They now have a really rich experience that they can communicate and draw upon, whether it's from their technical expertise in stats or what they learned as part of the community or how they leadership skills or presentation skills, whatever it is. And then I also have a section on how they add service learning specifically to their resume. So like we talk about this, and like, again, you saw earlier the differentiation between volunteering and service learning. So I tell them, I go over them that difference, and we talk about how to document that. And so I help them highlight their experience on their resumes and their experience through specifically service learning that they can now add, and again, help them make them marketable. So that's mine in a nutshell. So hopefully like you can kind of see, to me, that's what it looks like. Yeah, service learning. And also I will say from my own perspective, service learning is incredibly enriching to me. I love my service learning project in a really meaningful, I derive meaning from it. And the students do as well. I didn't share it, but I collect data, and the students, I mean, overwhelmingly really love the service learning project. So I'll stop talking now.
It's great. Yeah, it's such a great example. Love your backwards design models. That's awesome. So I thought, and feel free again to ask questions. You can unmute or you can throw them in the chat. Janet, that you and I could maybe talk about challenges first and then rewards. So I'm just going to share my screen. I just have a single slide for this so we can kind of guide our way through it here. But I identify, or we identified, I can't remember this outline I'll give about just a few kind of high level challenges that come up. I'll talk about mine first, maybe Janet, and then you can chime in. Okay, perfect. So time and resource constraints. I'm sticking with my 383 example because I wanted to not be all over the place in sharing story. And that one is sort of thematic with the challenges that are faced when you're actually partnering with an organization or an individual that's part of an organization. A couple of the big challenges that we had in time and resource constraints was that we met 3 times a week, but the students just had very little bandwidth to meet outside the classroom. And so when you're designing your service learning, to make sure that it kind of fits within the construct of the class, or that you manage expectations of how much the students are working on things outside of the classroom. And we also had really limited FaceTime with the clients. This was before Zoom was more popular. So Zoom has been a bit of a game changer with it, but having that FaceTime with the partners can be a challenge if they're not available, or or you really want them in person. As far as finding and collaborating with partners, I've been pretty fortunate. Jessica and Allison are terrific resources for this. So that shouldn't be a huge barrier if you are able to articulate what you're looking for and the type of partnership you're hoping to find and the outcomes you're hoping to achieve. The greatest challenge would be if you get partnered with someone who is not either accessible or not responsive, or someone who is not willing to give you much. As far as if you need access to certain data, or you need access to their assets or their website or their social, and they're not really, open to giving you that access, that can be a barrier. Balancing service with academic learning. I've had service learning completely take over my curriculum, which is not ideal. So it can become a bit of a beast. And I think that what Janet was saying about that backward design approach it could mitigate some of that problem. If you really set up yourself to understand how much of service learning going to kind of take truly of my time, of my students' time, and of the overall sort of course schedule and syllabus. And then the last point I'll make is assessing learning. I use multiple techniques, so I was able to actually attach rubrics to deliverables. Also use different evaluation mechanisms, both very micro and short form, as well as long form. And then I even went a step further, and I actually had 383 students come back and serve as ambassadors to the CCE experience. And I was able at that time to get them on as TAs or even internship credit. And that was a real treat. So then we had peer-to-peer mentoring that was built in as well. So Janet, go ahead and share yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Rebecca covered most of it. What I would reiterate is, like, for me, the alternative is using fake or pre-existing data sets. And you don't have to email pre-existing data sets. You don't have to ask them and coordinate with them. Essentially, the reality is you're adding a layer of people. And anytime you add a layer of people, it's harder. And so I would just echo sort of that challenge, as well as the other ones. Or for one semester, we partnered with a local shelter, emergency shelter for women and children. And the students worked really hard. We volunteered at the shelter one day, like over Thanksgiving break, we went and volunteered. The students loved it. They were so ready for the presentations. The head of the shelter was in our class for 3 minutes as we're doing final presentations. And there was an emergency at the shelter and she had to leave. And so, this thing that the students had worked for 15 weeks on so diligently and with such care and passion, you could feel the deflation in the room, and that was a huge bummer. But that, what are you going to do? There's an emergency at the shelter. And so those kinds of hiccups, you're introducing the potential for hiccups. And so I would say that's probably the biggest challenge for me.
Why don't you go ahead and keep talking about rewards while you're there?
Okay. So I will tell you, from my perspective, and not just my perspective that I think students like it, I collect data on this every semester. They love the service learning project. They find great meaning in it. I do think it helps them understand how, like for me, one of my goals, how quantitative literacy helps them be successful in helping professions. I'll also say, like, what's really cool is almost every semester, a student ends up getting a job with our partner. So one semester we partnered with SARC, which is our support and advocacy resource center. It is for women who have been victims of crime. And right now I currently have 3 former students working there directly from doing our partnership. I mentioned the shelter. That semester, one of our students, that work really spoke to them. And so she applied and became a case manager at that shelter. So I think they're enjoying it on a coursework level. And then also for some students, it adds a little bit of meaning. And then those students that I mentioned that are now at SARC that got jobs there, what's really cool is they came back. They loved it so much. They came back, and we just did a partnership 1 year ago, a year-long partnership. And they came back as alumni in the classroom talking to students. I was in your shoes and we did this thing and now we get to do it. It was a very full circle moment for me, delightful, but also like kind of spoke to the way that, for me at least, I really see a lot of meaningful outcomes outside of the classroom, and that matters to me. So.
You hit on a lot of really wonderful things. I think it's a no-brainer to have CCE in your curriculum if you can work through the kinks of letting it take control of your course schedule, and hopefully developing longer-term relationships with partners that you could use year over year. That I did that in this one class, and it was really helpful. And I was starting to do that in another class. What I really found is that it helps to kind of narrow your field. I worked with 3 partners one semester and 4 another, and that's a little much. I'm not sure I recommend that. As much fun as that is, and gives such a depth and breadth to the students, it is a logistical challenge for sure. But the students love the CCE, just like Janet was saying, and they get so much more out of it. It really also gives them, in my world of PR and marketing, they have to talk to people. And they're so used to just talking to their friends. They have to actually go out. They have to talk to people, they have to interview people. They have to interact with the client as well as the vendors. They have to actually get out of their chair. They have to get up. They have to go into the community. They have to capture footage. They have to then bring that footage back. They have to put it into a framework of the marketing materials. And I don't have any other assignments that really do this as well and as meaningfully as CCE projects do. And so it inherently develops their skills. It inherently gives them stuff to talk about on their resume and in job interviews. And at the same time, they're learning that just that huge value and that huge like warm fuzzy of giving back to their community. So
I have one more reward that's not on there. And I want to be really clear. Up until this point, I feel like you all hopefully are like, Janet does this because she cares and is passionate about it and believes it's the right thing to do, which is all true. So the thing I'm going to tell you is not a reason to do it, but it is an outcome. And that is, I would say also, that this project has given me, I've gotten a lot of mileage from it professionally speaking. Like, I think like when I've been nominated for teaching awards, a lot of it comes from doing this project. Because one, students see it and they nominate you because it's meaningful and it's visible. It's visible in the community and it's visible to colleagues. And again, I don't think that's a reason to do it, but I do think that is a benefit of it. Because you have something very tangible to talk about what you are doing in your classroom. And like I said, and for me, I scaffold it in multiple ways. We're not just doing the content and we're not just out in the community. We're also talking about like marketable skills and preparation, and we're tying all of that together. And that becomes something that it becomes very easy to talk about and to put in annual evaluations or promotion documents. I was in a meeting on Monday and I was sitting across from someone and I was like, okay, like, you know, what, as I look forward, what can I continue to do or what can I do better? And they just looked at me and were like, Janet, your service learning stuff is so sexy. I don't think you have to do anything. And I was like, oh. And so again, I don't think that's a reason to do it, but I do think it's a benefit worth mentioning, because I feel like I benefit from that.
Okay. That's awesome. Yes, I would agree. And when you look at your student course evals, especially anything open-ended, anyone that's working on service learning that really got something out of the experience, you're going to get some great pull quotes. Let me tell you. So I just want to be sensitive to time. So Erica, we can talk about creating a framework. I think Janet's already covered this really, really beautifully in her visual and in her just overview of the experience. We can touch on this at a high level, but the biggest thing you got to decide is how is this going to fit in your curriculum and how does it align with your goals? Finding those really nice partners. And again, Jessica and Allison are exceptional resources for that and other people on their team. The clear plan that addresses logistical challenges. And then also, how are you going to assess and evaluate the way I'm doing it with the large class, because I have 160 students, I can't have private partners. I can't babysit it at the level. So I think if you're new to it and you just want to kind of see what it's like, one great way to do it is to just start by having CCE sponsored activities built into the classroom. I have colleagues who do it as extra credit. I'm choosing to integrate it as part of their point structure. The students get to pick which project they want to do. They can also use it, if they've got sorority and fraternity service learning points that they've got or whatever they have, I don't know what the word is, credits they have to get. They can also do projects that are outside CCE led. It's all covered in the GivePulse structure. That your course gets its own page, like its own landing in GivePulse, which is awesome. So that things are fed into that are appropriate for what you're trying to achieve. They do their service learning. I just had them do screenshots to prove that they registered. And then once they do the service learning, we get reports every so often. I think it's probably monthly. I'm not sure. Allison, you can maybe clarify. And then they do this reflection. And I have CCE come in at the beginning of class. Allison was just in class Tuesday to check in with the students, get examples of what people are doing, answer questions. And then now I developed a template that I'm happy to share if anybody wants it. It's just a simple reflection template. And in my class, I'm also having them create a mock social media post to talk about their experiences. And I say mock because I don't like to force people to use social media if they don't want to. But I think that overall, they're if nothing else, they're getting exposure to what service learning is for future classes that do have partners. And they are also getting that value add of giving back to their community. Janet, other thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm good to open it up with the few minutes we have left in case anyone has questions. I am getting ready to, I'm going to put in case anyone wants my slides, I'll throw those in the chat and I'll throw some of those other documents I mentioned. So I'll throw that in the chat. But if anyone has any questions or ideas or wants to vet something, I say let's open it up. Mia.
Hi, Janet. It's always so nice, and all the rest of you that I know, Erica. So something that Rebecca said, start my video. So I was looking through the Give Pulse page, and there's a lot of events, and I noticed that there was classrooms, like classes. Is that what you're talking about, Rebecca, when the class sets up a separate?
Yeah, so this was my first time doing it this way, where I don't have a partner, and I was a little bit like, what, how does this work? Yeah, it's fantastic. I could show you the page if you want to see it. It's specific to 101. And it is, I'm gonna have to pull it up. And it gives students a whole slew of different ideas and categories for what they want to work, how they want to complete it. And then it also gives them a little option that if they're going to do something that's not a CCE led, like that's something like maybe their fraternity has a cleanup day, or maybe they for some other activity they volunteer at a retirement home, and they go and they read stories or something. There's this other alternative. So I'll look for that, and then I'll come right back to you. So just one second.
And my second question while you're looking for that is, how do you get that started? Because I am going to start small, like Janet said, and introduce this in the spring semester. And I know we're all busy, and so thinking of adding something or trying to figure out something between semesters is difficult. But I have some ideas of things, if I didn't have to work with a partner, but that would work for my students to work on in their own time. I have some ideas that would also be community. I think they would qualify. How do I go about setting up a page like this and then running it by the folks at CCE to make sure it qualifies? And how do I set that up?
Allison.
I can take that. Yeah.
Yes,
So
Allison, take it.
We can just meet and you can kind of talk about what kind of projects you want your students to do, if they have a theme or if they're open to anything.
Okay.
And then we actually build the Give Pulse page for you.
Perfect.
And then we're constantly updating it as new projects come up, things come open. We have the CCE led projects that provide transportation, but if you're like Rebecca's class, they can do pretty much anything. So we have a lot of community partners in the area that all have projects going on as well. And those get posted to the page too. We're just constantly monitoring Give Pulse pages for all the classes right now this semester, and making sure that they're up to date with everything that's going on. And we have to take old events that have expired off. And then we also use that system to provide you with reports on what your students have done.
Yeah, and so it tells them, this is the example. So this is my 101. Students access it through their standard WSU credential, and they can see events that are coming up, community partners that we have. They also can add an impact. So this would be one that would be outside of the CCE space. I'm really open right now because some students are doing CCE for other classes, and I'm not because of 160, I'm not able to police, you doing something unique to 101. So I'm letting them just be in this space and experience service learning for whatever it is, but they do have to do my reflection. So at minimum, even if they're double dipping in the sense of service learning activity, I do want them doing my reflection. And I don't care if they spend an hour or 3 hours. I don't want to police it. It's just my honest, I don't even know how I would. And also I really just want them to, experience it. I want them to experience some level of giving back to their community, whether it's a CCE led or it's something that they've got, that they're donating their time, they're volunteering, and they're putting themselves out there. That's what matters. And Allison, you could talk a little bit more about the fact that there is virtual options as well.
Yeah, we have a few virtual options that are especially for the global students, but we hear from students that maybe can't find anything in their schedule, and we'll steer them that way. But really, there's projects going on, both CCE led and community partners, every day of the week, including weekends. That we can, send students to. The CCE led projects right now actually are getting a little full because they could take 6 people at a time, but there's tons of other things students can do just right in the local area, so, and we, work with pretty much, every nonprofit in our local area over in Northern Idaho. We have community partners even up in Spokane, that sort of thing. And some classes, like Rebecca's, they let them do anything. And then we have other ones that, like a child development class where it has to be specifically with children. And so like on their Give Pulse page, we only push things that deal with children on there. And then we have, classes that are environmental classes that want them to work on environmental projects. So we will push environmental projects onto their Give Pulse page, but we're just constantly monitoring the Give Pulse pages to provide opportunities.
Okay, so for an avenue that's already set up, so I don't have to go through too much legwork, I can use the CCE staff to make a Give Pulse page, and then use some already available partners. And then if I have additional, and I can do virtual because most of my students are doing things on the computer. And I can discuss with you guys how to set that up as a project. And then I really like that Rebecca left it open, but then personalized it by saying, but here's the assessment I need you to fill out. So I can do that. Well, anyway, this makes it a lot more approachable for me, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it out.
Awesome.
Oh,
Awesome.
yeah, I just have a question for you. What campus are you on?
I'm on the Pullman campus, and I teach a class in mapping or geographic information systems. Hi, Erica. And so it's really easy for me to integrate these projects in a virtual way. And what I really like about, I can't not do it because I can set up projects that students can do anytime that they have a moment. Like, hey, get on your computer and, do something, map. So, and then there's also in-person projects that I see with like PCEI and the Conservation District. I've already looked. So I think that my class is really well, I already have many ideas.
Absolutely. That's great. And the CCE is funded for, we provide, and we'll meet, you'll meet with Allison. She'll tell you there's lots of support we will provide and can provide. And we're fully funded for Pullman and global faculty, and then faculty that work Tri-Cities, Vancouver, Spokane. We can provide some support and consultation to get started. But glad to know you're on the Pullman campus and can meet me right into the fun.
Okay, I will. All right, I'll do that. I'll do that with some time before the next semester so I can get set up.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you putting this together, Erica, and all the rest of you for coming.
This was really great. Thank you so much to Jessica, to Rebecca, to Janet for raising awareness for us, for lowering the activation barrier. It just seems like you can really start small and build it and fit it with your students. So I appreciate you being here and sharing with the faculty.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting. This is great.
Thank you.